The woman sitting next to me at dinner was wearing my husband's favorite perfume. I knew that perfume. I had been smelling it on his shirts for 6 months. A soft, expensive scent, roses, and something darker underneath. I had smelled it in his car, on his coat, on the collar of the shirts I dropped at the dry cleaner every week. And now here it was again, sitting right beside me at a long dinner table, on a beautiful young woman who did not know who I was. Her name was Amber. She was 26 years old. She had bright eyes and a confident smile, and a laugh that she used a little too often. She was, I already knew, sleeping with my husband. What she did not know, what she could not possibly have guessed, was this. Every month, without knowing it, she received her salary from me because I owned the company she worked for, and I owned the company my husband ran. I owned all of it. I had built all of it, and I signed her paycheck with my own hand. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Catherine. I am 42 years old, and 20 years ago, I started a company with nothing but an idea and a small loan from my aunt. The company was called Meridian. In the beginning, it was just me at a kitchen table working 18 hours a day. I sold one product to one shop, then 2 shops, then 10. I worked harder than I have ever worked at anything. I did not sleep. I did not rest. And slowly, year by year, Meridian grew. I want you to understand how hard those early years were. There were months when I could not pay myself at all. I ate plain rice for dinner so that I could pay my one employee on time. I wore the same 2 dresses to every meeting for 3 years. I made every phone call myself. I packed every box myself. I drove the van myself in the rain at 5 in the morning to deliver orders before the shops opened. When something broke, I fixed it. When someone quit, I did their job until I found a replacement. When a customer was angry, I sat with them until they were not. I did all of it alone. I did not have a rich family. I did not have powerful friends. I had an idea, a small loan from my aunt, and a stubbornness that frightened people. And out of those 3 small things, brick by brick, I built a company. Nobody handed me anything. I remember that now. For a long time, I let myself forget it, but I remember it now. By the time I was 30, Meridian was a real company, with a real office and 40 employees. That was the year I met David. David was charming. He was handsome and confident, and he made everyone in a room feel important. He was good at the things I was not good at. He could stand in front of a crowd and make them believe anything. He could walk into a meeting and win it with a smile. I was the opposite. I was quiet. I liked to work behind the scenes. I liked to build things, not to show them off. So when we married and David joined the company, it made a kind of sense that he became the public face of Meridian. He became the chief executive. He gave the speeches. He shook the hands. He appeared in the magazines and the newspapers. David Vance, the man behind Meridian. And I stepped back. I let him have the spotlight. I did not need it. I kept doing what I had always done. I made the real decisions. I controlled the money. I owned the shares, all of them. 92% held quietly in my name through a company that very few people ever bothered to look into. I signed the important papers. I approved every budget. Nothing happened at Meridian without my knowing it. But to the outside world, David was Meridian, and I was just Catherine, the quiet wife, the woman in the background, the woman people forgot to introduce at parties. I told myself I did not mind, and for a long time, I did not. I loved David. I trusted him. I believed we were building something together, even if only one of us stood in the light. I was wrong about that, but it took me a long time to see it. The first sign was the perfume. It started about 6 months before that dinner. I noticed it one evening when David came home late, a scent on his collar that was not mine. I told myself it was nothing, a colleague, a crowded lift, a hug from a friend. I was good at telling myself things were nothing. I had a lot of practice. But then it happened again and again. Late nights at the office that ran later and later. Business trips that did not quite add up. A phone that he now kept face down on the table and carried with him into every room, even the bathroom. I am not a stupid woman. I built a company from a kitchen table. I know how to read the signs, but knowing something in your head and letting yourself feel it in your heart are two very different things. And I did not want to feel it. So for months, I looked away until the night I found the messages. David was in the shower. His phone buzzed on the bedside table. I do not usually look at his phone, but that night, something made me pick it up. And there they were, months of them, messages between David and someone saved in his phone as A. I read them all. I sat on the edge of our bed in the quiet, and I read every single one. The sweet ones, the secret ones, the ones where they laughed about how busy he was, how important, how his boring wife never suspected a thing. There was one message I read 3 times. David had written it late one night. "Don't worry about Catherine," he had written. "She has no idea. She never does. She's happy in her little world, cooking and cleaning and staying out of the way. She's useful, actually. She keeps the house running so I can focus on the real work." The real work. I sat with those 2 words for a long time. The real work, as if the company were his, as if the 20 years, the kitchen table, the plain rice, the van in the rain had never happened, as if I were a piece of furniture that cooked, his boring wife. That was me. I felt something break inside me, very quietly, not a loud break, a small, clean one, like a thin bone. And in the silence that followed, something else began to grow, something cold and clear and steady. I did not cry. I did not scream. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. And when David came out of the shower, I smiled at him and I asked him how his day had been. "Long," he said. "So many meetings. I'm exhausted." "Poor thing," I said. "You work so hard." And I began that very night to find out exactly who A was. It did not take long. I still controlled the company, remember? I had access to everything, every email, every record, every file. It took me 2 days to find her. Amber, 26 years old, a junior marketing manager at Meridian. She had joined the company 8 months earlier. She reported to a manager, who reported to a director, who reported to David. And David, of course, reported to no one except me, though he seemed to have forgotten that. I looked at her employee file for a long time, her photograph, her salary, which I had approved myself months ago without knowing what she would become, her start date, her little notes about wanting to grow with the company and learn from the leadership team. She was learning from the leadership team. All right, I could have fired her that day. With one email, one signature, I could have ended her career at Meridian and made sure she never worked in our industry again. I could have destroyed David just as easily. I owned everything. They were both, without knowing it, entirely in my hands. It is a strange feeling to hold that much power over the people who have hurt you. and to hold it in complete silence. They went on with their little affair, laughing, careless, sure of themselves, and they had no idea that the quiet woman at home could end both their lives with a phone call. I could have done it in anger. Anger would have been easy, but anger is loud and messy, and I had not built a company by being loud and messy. I had built it by being patient and careful, and by choosing exactly the right moment. So I chose to wait for exactly the right moment. And I already knew, deep down, what that moment would be. But I did not do it, not yet, because I am a patient woman, and I wanted to understand. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I wanted to know exactly what kind of people they were before I decided what to do. So I waited, and I watched, and I said nothing. Those were strange weeks. In the daytime, I was the owner of a large company, making sharp decisions, reading contracts, moving money. And in the evening, I was the quiet wife, warming David's dinner, listening to his lies, watching him lie so easily and so well that I almost admired it. He would sit across from me at our own kitchen table, the very table where I had built everything, and he would look me in the eye and tell me about a late meeting that I knew had never happened because I owned the calendars and I had checked. I learned a great deal about my husband in those weeks. I learned that he lied without effort, the way other people breathe. I learned that he thought I was foolish and that my supposed foolishness pleased him because it made his life easy. And I learned, most of all, that he did not love me, and perhaps never had. He had married the company. He had married the comfortable life. He had married the useful woman who kept the house running. He had never once married me. That knowledge should have destroyed me. And for a few nights, alone in the dark, it nearly did. But something in me had already begun to change. The betrayal was burning away the smallness I had wrapped around myself for 20 years. Underneath it, still there, still burning, was the stubborn woman who had driven the van in the rain. She had never left. She had only been quiet. David had no idea. He kept coming home late, kept smelling of roses, kept telling me how tired he was, how hard he was working, and I kept smiling and making his dinner and asking about his day, while inside me that cold, clear thing grew stronger and steadier every day. Then came the announcement. Meridian was turning 20 years old, 20 years since I had started it at my kitchen table. To celebrate, the company was holding a grand anniversary dinner. 100 guests, the finest hotel in the city, speeches, awards, champagne. David, of course, would be the star of the evening. He would stand up in front of everyone and tell the story of Meridian, which was really my story, and take the applause, which was really mine. I usually skipped these events. I did not like the spotlight, and everyone was used to David appearing alone. My wife prefers to stay home, he would say, and people would nod and forget I existed. But this year, I told David I would come. He was surprised. "Are you sure?" he said. "You always find these things so boring." "It's 20 years," I said. "I helped a little at the start. I like to be there." I helped a little at the start. I almost laughed as I said it. "Of course," David said, though I could see he was not pleased. "That's lovely, darling." I wonder if some part of him felt afraid in that moment. I hope so. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. A simple black dress, no jewelry except my wedding ring. I did not want to stand out. I wanted to be exactly what they all thought I was. The quiet wife, the woman in the background, invisible. The hotel ballroom was beautiful. 100 of Meridian's finest, in their best clothes, drinking champagne under golden lights. David worked the room like the master he was, laughing, shaking hands, glowing in the attention. I stood quietly to one side, holding a glass I did not drink from, watching, and then I saw her, Amber, in a bright red dress, laughing that laugh, standing a little too close to my husband. She was radiant. She was confident. She looked like a woman who believed the world belonged to her. She caught me looking, and she came over, smiling, holding out her hand. "Hi," she said. "I don't think we've met. I'm Amber. I work in marketing." "Catherine," I said, and I shook her hand. Her grip was firm. Her perfume filled the space between us. Roses and something darker. "Catherine," she repeated, and I watched her try to place me. "Are you a client? A partner?" "Something like that," I said. "I've been involved with Meridian for a long time." "Oh, how nice," she said, in the voice people use for someone they have already decided is not important. Her eyes were already drifting past me, back to David, back to the room, back to the people who mattered. "Well, enjoy your evening." And she walked away, back to my husband, and she did not think about me again. At dinner, by some arrangement of the seating I will never fully understand, Amber was placed at my table, 2 seats away then, when a guest moved right beside me. So there we were, the wife and the mistress, side by side, and only one of us knew it. She was pleasant enough, to me, in a distant way. She talked mostly to the people on her other side, the younger, louder guests, but now and then she turned to me and made the kind of small talk you make with someone you have decided is nobody. I watched her the way I once watched difficult customers and difficult contracts and difficult numbers, carefully, patiently, without letting my face show anything at all. It is a skill I had spent 20 years learning. You would be amazed what people say in front of a woman they have decided is not listening. Amber said a great deal. She told the young man on her other side, in a low, laughing voice she thought I could not hear, that she was basically running the marketing department now, and that the boss really trusts me, if you know what I mean. She winked when she said it. The young man laughed. I looked at my plate and cut my food into small, even pieces. She told a story about a weekend in Paris, a hotel, a view of the river. She did not say who she had gone with, but she touched the little gold bracelet on her wrist when she told it, and I recognized that bracelet because it had appeared on my own credit card statement 4 months earlier. A purchase David had told me was a gift for a client. I was the client, it seemed, in a way. "So how do you know David?" she asked at one point, cutting into her food. "We go back a long way," I said. "He's amazing, isn't he?" she said, and her eyes shone. "The way he built all this, from nothing. He's a genius, honestly. I've learned so much from him." I looked at her. "He built all this from nothing," I repeated softly. "Completely from nothing," she said. "It's inspiring." "It is quite a story," I said. I could have laughed. I could have wept. I did neither. I ate my dinner, and I let her talk, and I listened to this young woman tell me, the founder of Meridian, how my husband had built my company from nothing all by himself. I listened to her praise him. I listened to her laugh. And once, just once, I saw her hand brush his under the table, 2 seats down, when she thought no one was watching. I watched everything, and I waited. Then the speeches began. David stood up to great applause. He looked wonderful up there, tall and confident in the golden light. He thanked the guests. He thanked the staff. He told the story of Meridian, the story of a young man with a dream, working night and day, building something out of nothing. He did not mention me, not once, not even the polite, empty line husbands usually offer. And of course, my wonderful wife, nothing. I had become so invisible that he forgot to perform even the appearance of loving me. Amber, beside me, watched him with shining eyes and clapped louder than anyone. And that was the moment. That was when the last small piece of my patience quietly ran out. When the applause died down and David was about to sit, one of the board members, an older man named Richard, who had known me for years and was one of the very few people who knew the truth, stood up with his glass. "Before we continue," Richard said, "I think it's time we heard from someone who has been too quiet for too long. The person who truly built this company. Catherine, would you say a few words?" The room turned to look at me. 100 faces, confused, polite, wondering who I was. David's smile froze on his face, and beside me, Amber blinked and looked at me properly for the first time all evening. I stood up. I did not hurry. I smoothed my simple black dress. I picked up my glass, and I looked out at all of them, at the company I had built from a kitchen table, at the husband who had taken my light, at the young woman beside me who had laughed about his boring wife. "Thank you, Richard," I said. My voice was calm and clear. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine Vance, but 20 years ago, before I was anyone's wife, my name was Catherine Hartley, and Meridian was my idea. I started it at my kitchen table with a loan from my aunt. I sold the first product myself. I hired the first employee myself. For 20 years, I have owned this company. I still own 92% of it today. Every budget, every salary, every decision of any importance passes across my desk, including, I should say, the payroll." The room had gone completely silent. I could hear my own heart, steady and slow. David's face had turned gray. He had sat back down, slowly, as if his legs had stopped working. "I have stayed in the background for 20 years, I went on, because I was happy to let others take the credit. I believed we were a team. I believed the person standing in the light and the person building in the dark were on the same side." I paused. I was wrong about that, but I only found out recently. I turned, then, and I looked down at Amber, beside me. Her face had gone white. Her hand was frozen halfway to her glass. She had understood, finally, exactly who the quiet, unimportant woman beside her was. "Amber," I said gently, so that only our end of the table could hear. "You asked me tonight how I know David. I'll tell you. I know David because he is my husband, has been for 12 years. And I know you because I approved your salary 8 months ago, and because I have read every message you have sent to my husband for the last half year." I smiled at her, a small, sad smile. "You were right about one thing, though. His boring wife really didn't suspect a thing. For a while." Amber made a small sound. She did not speak. There was nothing she could say. All the confidence had drained out of her face. All the shine had gone from her eyes. She looked suddenly very young and very frightened, like a child who has broken something enormous and has just understood that it cannot be fixed. For a moment, one small moment, I almost felt sorry for her, but only for a moment, because I remembered the message. His boring wife never suspects a thing. And I remembered her laugh, and the bracelet, and the wink, and the way she had looked straight through me all evening, as if I were a coat on a chair. And the pity passed. I turned back to the room, and I lifted my glass, and I finished in my clear, calm voice so that everyone could hear. 20 years ago, I built this company on honesty and hard work. Those are still the only two things I value. So tomorrow, there will be some changes at Meridian. But tonight, please enjoy your dinner. You've all earned it. Thank you. I raised my glass to a silent room, and I drank, and I sat down. For a moment, no one moved. Then Richard, bless him, began to clap. And slowly, uncertainly, then all at once, the whole room joined him. 100 people, rising to their feet, applauding the quiet woman they had never bothered to notice, applauding me. David did not clap. He sat in his chair, gray and small, staring at the table. And Amber, beside me, quietly pushed back her chair, stood, and walked out of the ballroom, her red dress bright against the golden light, and she did not come back. The rest, as they say, happened quickly. The next morning, I went into the office, not as the quiet wife, but as what I had always been, the owner of Meridian. I called a meeting of the board. I told them the truth, all of it. They were shocked, but they were not surprised, not really. Some of them had wondered for years how much David truly did, and how much the quiet woman in the background truly carried. David was removed as chief executive that same week, not out of revenge, though I will not pretend there was no satisfaction in it. He was removed because a man who would lie to his wife and laugh about it with a girl in the marketing department could not be trusted to lead the company I had spent my life building. It was a simple business decision, the cleanest kind. Amber resigned before I had to make any decision about her at all. I heard later that she left the city entirely. I did not pursue her. I did not need to. She had lost the only thing she had really wanted, which was not David, I think, but the shortcut she thought he was. The staircase to the top that turned out to be a trapdoor. David and I divorced. He was stunned, at first, then angry, then, near the end, quiet. During one of our last meetings, with the lawyers out of the room, he looked at me and said, "I never realized you were so strong." "You never realized anything about me," I said. "That was always the problem. You looked at me for 12 years, and you never once saw me. You saw the background. You saw the quiet. You never saw the woman who built the thing you were standing on." He did not have an answer for that. There was no answer. He signed the papers. He took the settlement, which was fair, more than fair, because I am not a cruel woman, whatever else I am. And he left, and I let him go. And I was surprised to find that letting go did not hurt the way I had feared. It felt, mostly, like putting down something heavy I had been carrying for years, without noticing its weight. That was 2 years ago. The months right after the divorce were not easy, and I will not pretend they were. There is a particular loneliness that comes after a long marriage ends, even a marriage that was, in truth, already empty. The house was too quiet. I would set 2 places at the table out of habit, then put one away. I would hear a car in the street and feel my body brace for a key in the door that no longer came. Grief is strange. You can grieve a thing that was already gone. You can miss a person who was never really there. But slowly, that passed, and in its place, something unexpected grew. Freedom. I had forgotten what it felt like to make a decision without quietly wondering what David would think. I had forgotten what it felt like to walk into my own company and be seen. I redecorated the house, room by room, in colors he would have hated. I traveled, alone, to places I had always wanted to see and never mentioned because he found my interests dull. I made new friends, real ones, people who knew me as Catherine Hartley, the founder, and not as somebody's forgettable wife. I even, slowly and carefully, began to enjoy the spotlight I had feared for so long. The first time I gave a speech to the whole company, my hands were shaking, but I got through it. And the second time, they shook a little less. And now I stand in front of hundreds of people without a tremor, and I tell them the truth about how Meridian was built. And I watch the young women in the audience listen with wide, hungry eyes. And I think that is why I do this now, so that they will know it is possible, so that they will never make themselves small for anyone. Meridian is doing better than ever now. I stepped fully into the light at last. I give the speeches now. I shake the hands, and it turns out I am not as bad at it as I once believed. The quiet woman had a voice all along. She just never let herself use it. Sometimes at company events, a new young employee will come up to me, nervous, and say, "It's such an honor to meet you, Ms. Hartley. You built all of this." And I always tell them the same thing. "I did," I say, "and so can you." But remember one thing. Never mistake the person in the spotlight for the person holding the power. And never, ever decide that the quiet woman at the end of the table is nobody. She is usually the one who signs your paycheck. They laugh when I say it. They think it is a joke. I do think sometimes about that dinner, about the perfume, roses, and something darker, sitting down beside me in a bright red dress, about a young woman who looked at me and decided in half a second that I was not important, that I was not worth remembering, that I was just the boring wife. She was not entirely wrong. I had let myself become invisible. I had handed my light to someone else and told myself I did not need it. That was my mistake, and I own it. But here is the thing about invisible women. We see everything. We hear everything. We are standing quietly at the edge of every room, and you forget we are there, and you say things in front of us that you should not say. And some of us, it turns out, own the whole building. Amber sat beside me at dinner, and she did not know she was sitting beside the woman who signed her paycheck, the woman who had built everything she was standing in, the woman who could end her career and her lover's career with a single signature. She found out. In the end, they both did. And I found out something too that night, something more important than any of it. I found out that I had spent 20 years believing my worth was quiet and small and best kept in the background. I found out that was a lie. I found out that the woman who built Meridian from a kitchen table had been standing at the edge of her own life for far too long. I don't stand at the edge anymore. I sit at the head of the table now, right where I always belonged. And if you are a quiet woman, reading this, sitting somewhere at the edge of your own life, letting someone else take your light because you have been told that is your place, I want you to hear one thing from me. Your quiet is not the same as your worth. You can be gentle and still be powerful. You can build something in silence and still deserve to stand in the light of it. And the day you decide to stop making yourself small, no one, not a husband, not a mistress, not a whole ballroom of people who never noticed you, will be able to look through you again. I know, because I did it, and I have never once looked back.